We're in the 22nd chapter of Isaiah. In verses 1 through 14, I titled that section, Jerusalem During a Siege. And the Valley of Visions has reference to Jerusalem that contains several hills and valleys, center of divine revelations and visions. They had gone up on the housetop, and the question is, what aileth thee now? Well, what ailed them was sin. They didn't really acknowledge such, but that's still ultimately what was the problem that they had. And in verse 2, we noted that they were joyously celebrating, probably confidence that their warriors would be able to defend the city. Or it might have been that Sennacherib had accepted Hezekiah's offer of the tribute that he had paid at one time and stopped. But many individuals were suffering, but it was not from the sword or in battle. It was from pestilence and famine. That probably because of the blockade that had been put up by Sennacherib. So that brings us to verse 3, where we ended our study. That all thy rulers are fled together. They are bound by the archers. All that are found in thee are bound together, which have fled from far. The rulers would include the leaders, the chief men, the generals, all of those individuals. During the invasion of Sennacherib, some of these leaders had tried to escape, but they were captured. It would be difficult to escape that type of a siege. Also, during the attack by Nebuchadnezzar, King Zedekiah, his family and his officers fled, but likewise they were captured by the Babylonians. Someone turn over to Jeremiah chapter 39 and read verses 1 through 7 for us. Jeremiah 39, 1 through 7. So Nebuchadnezzar, in the 9th year of Zedekiah, the king of Jerusalem, laid siege. In the 11th year, Zedekiah tries to escape and flees. The Babylonian army pursued after them, caught them, and then brings them to Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar has all of the children of Zedekiah put to death, or all the sons. They kill all the nobles of Judah and then put Zedekiah's eyes out. So basically the last thing that he sees is his sons being killed. Not a good remembrance, I wouldn't think. Well, here now we have that the rulers are fled, just like Zedekiah did. They're bound, though, by archers, and they're bound together, which have fled from far. Bound is to be taken or captured, in this case by the enemy's archers.
Does that mean that the air goes through them? Is that what bound means?
It means to be taken captured. They're captured. The archers are the ones who captured it. So that's what he's saying. The enemy's archers capture the nobles or the rulers. And they bound them.
What's the idea of shooting arrows where it makes them stop in their tracks so they can't go no further? They're basically cornered?
Doesn't necessarily mean that. Could mean that they just fled and that those who were the archers caught them, stopped them. There's also the idea they are bound together, all of them citizens and rulers together. Often in that time period, captives were bound together by a single rope. And so that might be the idea of being bound together. That there's a single rope binding them together with others. So in verse 4, therefore said I, look away from me. I will weep bitterly, labor not to comfort me, because of the spoiling of the daughter of my people. Isaiah here is turning to his own grief, his own feelings. And a lot of people, when they are in grief or they are grieving, they want to be left alone. And that's basically what Isaiah is saying. Leave me alone. Let me vent my feelings without restraint. Don't try and comfort me. I want to release these feelings, this grief for Jerusalem. Grief at this time was far more appropriate than merrymaking that was seen previously by the people. No matter what that reasoning for the merriment might have been, it should have been grief. If they had realized what Isaiah knew, or maybe it would be better to say if they had accepted what Isaiah knew and prophesied, they likewise would have been in sorrow. But they didn't. I think a good parallel to this would be Jeremiah's grief at the destruction of Jerusalem. Isaiah is saying, let me weep, here's my grief for or because of the spoiling of my daughter, of my people. Someone read Lamentations 1:16. And then Lamentations being written after the destruction of Jerusalem by Jeremiah. And he's seeing the city destroyed. So Lamentations 1:16.
For these things I weep, mine eye runneth down with water, because the comforter that should relieve my soul is far from me. My children are desolate because the enemy prevails.
The my children there, of course, dealing with the Israelites. And he's saying, I'm weeping, water is running down my face from the eyes. Grief and sorrow because of what had taken place to Jerusalem and to the children of Israel. Let me make a couple of applications in regards to this. First is, should we not weep for the condition of our nation today? And we might even add the world today. When we look at our society, it is and has become a wicked and an evil society. Things that would have been just we would not have accepted them any at all half a century ago are now accepted and promoted. Try and get one of our leaders to speak out really against the sin of homosexuality. Even to call it a sin is becoming dangerous in our society today. And social media, places like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and others, are likely to ban anything that is said in a negative way about homosexuality, because it's not only accepted, it is promoted. One of the great problems of our society, you can talk about homosexuality, but is the situation of the home. How many children today grow up in a home with both a mother and a father? It's rare. It might be today that they grow up in a home that only has a mother, for example, but they've got several different fathers because of the adultery or fornication of the mother, or because of the divorce and remarriage problems in our society. Well, that's another aspect of it. Yes, our government pays extra money for extra children in welfare. So if a young girl still in school know how to play the system, they get more money if they get pregnant and have children. So some of them, before they even get out of high school, will have multiple children. Why? Because they will get more money from the government that way. Our nation is in a sad state. Now, those are things that just would not have been accepted years ago. Look at the language of our nation. I mean, the filth, vile words that are used that are now then so commonly used that everyone almost is expected to use them. And no, I wouldn't even say them because they are vile. Not even to express what they are saying. It just, and yet they think it's not. They think nothing about it.
You watch news commentator, watch the language. They won't use the real hardcore stuff. They just put it through there with that one. Those words that wouldn't even be allowed in 1939. It's gone.
Yeah.
But they add more to those.
They add more to those, yes. And yes, the news commentators, they have to tone it down. But get on some of the cable TV channels and listen to some of the language that is used. And just use repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly as if there's nothing to it. And when you mentioned Gone with the Wind, when it came out, the one word there just caused people to be shocked. Wouldn't show it in places because of the one word that was used. See if you can go through one night of television without that word being used multiple times now. Henry? They bleep out some of it, and yeah, it becomes difficult because it's beep, 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 beep. You're hearing it bleeped out, so the buzz or whatever that is so frequent that you can't even understand them. Mm-hmm.
One year he took Red Fox with him, and he was on Johnny Carson. He showed all these things he was doing. He said, "Why would you show Red Fox? Did he go eat?" He said, "Oh yeah." "Why didn't you show you?" He said, "Well, let me show you a clip." He found everything he said, and every word was beat.
Yeah.
See, that's why we can show you.
That would have been the 70s. And yeah, Red Fox was known for his vulgarity. But you go out in society today and that's the way so many people speak.
And the sad part of it is, I can take a good program and ruin it with this profanity. It's absolutely worth this good without it.
It would have been better without it, but I don't know and understand why they think they have to include it. But they do, and it makes watching it almost impossible.
People won't watch a G-rated movie.
That's what they claim.
Saw a thing on that. They have to have some words in there to get it up to at least
PG. Yeah, they claim that a G-rated movie will not make money. Yet, when they put them out, when they do, it usually is very successful and makes a lot of money. which kind of goes against what they say. But yes, they will generally include certain words to try and get up to at least a PG rating. And a lot of times even they intend to get an R rating. That's a lot of times what they're after. But the language of our society is just horrid. The morals, the fornication, the adultery, and should we even talk about the dress or lack of clothing that people wear? I mean, today nothing is left to the imagination. And it's a sad situation. Our nation is going to hell in a handbasket. Just go ahead and use the phrase. It is. Because of the liberalism that was forced down our throats, and now then we're reaping the whirlwind in our nation.
Mentoring a little boy this year.
Mm-hmm.
He had 5 mothers. They all were in the same household.
5 mothers, but all in the same household.
His mother's partners that she would have and get rid of. And all of the partners wanted him to call partner father. And he told me, he said, Miss Phyllis, I can't call her father. He's not a man. He was one of those women who wanted to be called a father.
A lesbian type situation where the
Talk about trouble, he was in trouble all the time.
well, you destroy the home unit and you destroy society. A child growing up in that type of a situation is not going to be a well-behaved child.
He said he didn't know what to do.
He didn't know what to do. Well, no wonder. There's been no moral grounding within his life. Look at the riots today that have been going on. I-
170 businesses burned down in Minneapolis. We're talking about a topic, we're gonna talk to.
Okay, 170 businesses burned to the ground. We all saw the looting, the burning, and I don't want to say too much on, but I will say a few things. If you look at Black Lives Matter, they are an organization. One of the founders of it said they were trained Marxists. Now, I say that from the standpoint, Marxism must destroy Christianity. The two cannot harmonize. So they start with certain things, but after a while they come to the church. And we're seeing that as well taking place. Churches are now being attacked. And I'm saying churches from a generic denominational sense, not the Lord's church necessarily, but all religious groups calling themselves, after Christ. They're being attacked. Why? Because fascism, no matter where it comes from, has to destroy Christianity. They cannot coexist.
You ever remember Nikita Khrushchev?
Nikita Khrushchev,
He predicted exactly what was going to happen, and he laid it right out, and we're right in the middle.
leader of the Soviet Union, when he spoke at the United Nations, laid out that we will destroy you. Not going to come from without, but he set forth that which would take place from within, and what he said is coming true.
He was talking about the USA, he wasn't talking about all that.
Yeah, he was talking about the United States. We will destroy the United States, but it's going to be by attacking them within. Today, since I mentioned Black Lives Matter, if you even say all lives matter, you're attacked. Now, yes, I believe all lives matter, whether they be black, whether they be white, whether they be red, whether they be yellow, whatever it might be. All lives matter. But kill him again when Jesus comes. That is what people have been trained to accept. I've mentioned this before, but it bears repeating. That took place in the universities and colleges. It first started actually in the higher degrees, when people were going for their masters and for their PhDs. You go back to the 1960s, you had the radical liberals who were making all of these attacks. They learned that didn't work, at least not then. They then determined, we're going to use the classroom to educate the people and thus take over that way. So they became the doctors and all of this that started teaching those who had to get their degree, and then it filters down to the normal colleges and universities. Then it goes into the high schools, then into the elementary schools. And now then you have a situation where our young people, they have no concept of morality. They have no concept of history. Destroy everything. Well, that's because of what we started back in the 1960s, Joyce.
I was listening to something the other day where they were talking about all these higher educations.
Mm-hmm.
And the children, they said especially the girls, that the professors teach all this liberal garbage, and they go home and start telling their mothers, and then their daddy, and they say, well, they got this education, I guess we better listen to them, and that's why it's gotten so bad in all the family situations.
Yeah, and they are taught a total disrespect of the parents. Parents are ignoramuses, of course, so don't listen to them. You're educated and you are knowledgeable. They're not. They've just been force-fed this doctrine. And it's destroying America. But that's just speaking about the United States. The same problems are taking place in the entire world. We're not the only nation that it's happening to. It's happening all over, to every nation. And you kind of wonder, how long is God going to put up with it? But there should be, Isaiah's statement, look away from me, I will weep bitterly. Don't try and comfort me. We should be weeping over the condition of our nation. And that starts in the home and proceeds to the schools and to the government and sadly to the church as well. And so should we not cry or weep over the condition of the church? I mean, look at the condition of the church today. It is in a extremely sad condition. And I'm talking about the Lord's church now, those who claim to be Church of Christ. And I say claim in that sense from the standpoint that they have left the moorings of Christ and accepted anything and everything that comes along. You think of anything in the world and any perversion, it will make its way into the Lord's church. The extreme, I guess, of that, there's congregations that have Church of Christ on them and claim to be the church who accept and promote homosexuality. Now then, I'm not sure how far away you can get other than that. That's showing the extreme. But that goes back to many years as well. I don't know how many realize this, but years ago, back in the 70s, producing Bible class material is a profitable business. But it is very difficult to find writers who will write and get all the material together and produce all of the graded materials for Bible classes. So guess what we started doing? We started buying the denominational material, putting our covers on it, and then selling it as work of the church and for the church. And congregations did not even know it. Bought the material, used the material, and guess what was being taught? Doesn't take a genius to figure it out, does it? It was denominational teaching. Now, they claim to edit it out. Well, some of it they did, but most of it they did not. Guess what happened to those young people growing up under that? Well, they grew up. And to a great extent, they're the leaders in the church today. What about all that denominational doctrine that they were taught? They still hold to it. Talk today with members of the church and ask them about authority. And many times you will get a blank stare like, what is that? What are you talking about? Because there's no concept of Bible authority. Yet I mentioned that you have to have authority for everything that you do today. And see what type of responses you get from members of the church. And does anyone here reject that idea that we have to have authority for everything that we do and say? If you do, all you need to do is read Colossians 3:17, and that takes care of it. Even to the putting of your socks on. Let me state this in relationship to authority, that a lot of people misunderstand authority as their concept of Bible authority is that you have to have an explicit statement regarding it. No, that's not the case. In many situations, and I guess about every command that God gives, there is expediency in regards to that. Thus, putting your socks on, for example. Well, God has authorized us to clothe ourselves. There is an expediency and a optional aspect in which we clothe ourselves. Thus, there is authority for putting on our socks. Why? Because that is an an option in regards to the clothing of ourselves that God has authorized. Problem is, when we start underdressing, and in reality, 1 Timothy 2, 11 and 12 or 10 through 12, is talking more about overdress than underdress. To addressing, basically to draw attention to yourself, draw attention to the body. And we have that problem in the church. Since the, what's the best word, invention? That's not really the best word to use, but the invention of the mini dress and then the micro dress that followed. Men who were righteous, many of them had difficulty even serving the Lord's table because they would walk in the clothing and the body parts that they would be able to see, made it difficult for them to properly worship God. As a teacher in a class, there are times in which you can look out and basically the clothing is so short that you can see women's panties. We don't think about these things. Have you ever seen women, since I'm going to pick on y'all for a while, that anytime they bend over, they or, yeah, that's the other thing, pulling the skirt down. Men are just as bad nowadays. The condition of the church. Those things weren't taught. They were ignored. And some preachers and elderships didn't really care one way or the other. Hey, they're here. That's all that matters. Get the numbers.
You get numbers, you get money. Money's all that counts, right?
Well, there was a congregation, since you mentioned money, and money's all that counts, there's a congregation that went through a split. The group that left said, we're going to leave, and this was actually stated and planned that they won't have enough money to keep the building open, so we'll be able to come back in and take over. That's money. You could think about the number of times in which elderships compromise purely because of money. They've built a building. They owe a lot of money on it. Guess what you have to have in order to pay off the note? You got to have money, contribution. What happens if you take too much of a stand on certain things? People leave. What happens to contribution? It goes down, and now then you don't have the money to pay for things. That's the influence of money. And it has become a problem, or has been a problem through the years with congregations of the Lord's church. That's true. A lot of times sound preachers will get fired. Why? Because they offended somebody who might have given a lot of money to the church. And so there's a financial decision that is made to get rid of the preacher. Same thing happens with elders as well. Get rid of some elders, because if you don't, you've got some people who are upset with them and they're going to leave. So, well, that's true now, and just vote the elders out.
Years and years ago, you had what they had
You're right. There used to be those Sunday go-to-meeting clothes in which it was the best that a person had. It was reserved for the Sunday go-to-meeting, and you did not wear them other times. You had your other clothes for every day. Now then, people come in looking like slobs. Just put it that way. And some of the T-shirts that both guys and girls wear is ungodly. It's not the fact that what it covers or doesn't cover, it's what's on the T-shirts. Because the message that it presents is contrary to God's ways. That goes back to an attitude of respect. We need to have the greatest respect for God. And it's gone nowadays. It's not taught anywhere except some congregations of the Lord's church. And I'm saying it's not taught from a general standpoint. Certainly some homes teach it. But generally speaking, respect is out the window today. There is none. And think of some of the ways that, as you watch the news nowadays, the ways in which some of these young people talk. If I had said half of those things, well, I wouldn't have gotten that far. Because my father would have knocked me upside the head so quick that I wouldn't have gotten half of it out. Attitude of respect. We don't have it. The false doctrines that are in the church today, we should weep for the church, the condition that it's in. The congregations that are going to remain faithful to God's Word, true to it in every aspect, in their attempt to, they are slowly dying out. Just to be blunt about it. If you want to have the bigger numbers, then you're going to have to compromise in regards to God's Word, and you're going to have to start doing things that are not authorized by God. The appeal of the world instead of the appeal of God's Word. And that's what we're seeing in the church today. It's a sad situation that should bring the weeping bitterly that you see in regards to Isaiah here. We'll start with verse 5 then, Lord willing, next week.